if you've watched a lot of old Hollywood westerns, both the movies and the TV series that were popular in the 1950s and 1960s, what you're going to see are that most of the professionals in those movies and TV series, the doctors, lawyers, professional gamblers and such, along with most of the women, were dressed in period appropriate costumes, um, Victorian era costumes. And so we're going to start off with these four figures here with this woman. And she would be probably someone of prominence in the community. She's very nicely dressed, maybe some jewelry. Her hair is done up pretty well there. And these three gentlemen, you see here, they've all got the same torso on them, the vest with the gold watch and chain and the tie. And these might be the mayor, um, this could be barber, bartender, a piano player, someone, maybe he runs the general store. This gentleman here with this determined look on his face, we'll say for now he's the local cattle baron, and he's the guy who thinks that all these farmers are squatting on his range and he wants them gone. It's, up to your imagination. There are other torsos that would fit these characters, but I, as you can tell, I really like this vest and gold watch model. And if you just change the heads, change the hair, the hats, and so on, you can come up with a lot of different combinations. And if you spread them out, they won't be quite as noticeable that they've all shopped in the same store. Now let's turn this around real quick. And some more figures, and we'll start off with this gentleman here on the end. This is an outlaw figure. I think I paid about $6 for him. And you can see it's a very detailed figure, the shirt with the buttons, the vest. You can see it looks like a watch chain there. He's got the cartridge belt and cross-draw holster going on. And I also gave him a holster and a brick arms Colt Peacemaker, so he's armed to the teeth. Doesn't look like doesn't stand very close to the razor. And give him a bandana to cover his face, and he could be your local outlaw, robbing stagecoaches, banks, or maybe he's the hired gun that the evil cattle baron is brought in to push all those poor farmers off of their land. Next up, this young lady here. You can see she's also dressed in period attire, again, like a lot of the women, not all, but a lot of the women you see in the classic Hollywood westerns wearing dresses. And she might run the local cafe, be a dressmaker, or something of that nature. She could be the evil cattle baron's daughter who's in love with the hero. And we'll move on to this guy here, and you can see the torso. He's kind of got that classic Hollywood cowboy look. He's got the jacket, he's got the bandana already on, and there's a nice belt already printed on here. He's got the small brim fedora, and the black I think looks pretty good on the western figure. I think it fits pretty well. And then finally, this lady here on the end, older woman, very determined. She reminds me of Victoria Barclay. If you've ever seen the TV Western from the late 1960s, The Big Valley. Victoria Barclay was a Victorian era lady. She might dress like this woman back here when there's formal events and such, but if you cause trouble with the Barclays, this is the Victoria Barclay that's going to come visit. And you can see she's got a belt that I painted onto this, the hip or the end of the legs there, and then I painted the feet black just to try to suggest black boots to match the black belt, and of course a brick arms Winchester. So some ideas now. We've covered the professionals, we've covered the women, and then of course a couple of potential cowboy outfits here. But the rest of the men in these classic Hollywood westerns, they tended to dress them in contemporary work clothes, western or otherwise, whatever was available when the western was made. And so we'll cover putting together some cowboys with that idea in mind. Now let's talk a few minutes about putting together some working cowboys. we're going to start off with this patch pocket shirt. This was, I don't know, $1.25 or so on from a Bricklink dealer, so I ordered several when I made a parts order. And what I like about these is they look a lot like the contemporary work shirts that, as I mentioned earlier, Hollywood tended to use on a lot of the guys who were in the classic movie and TV westerns. And you can modify this a little bit or customize it a little bit. If you take a pencil eraser, you can see the pocket will come off. You could take one pocket off, take them both off. So you can change them up. The other torso, this could either be, I think it's called a Henley shirt, long sleeve with a few buttons at the top, a pullover shirt, or it could just be the cowboy's long underwear and he's just wearing his suspenders, no shirt. It's a couple interesting parts. Now, of course, there are torsos that have Western vests with fringe and all that stuff on it. And we've got a couple of just legs here. And gray would work, brown would work, just whatever. Blue would work as blue jeans or something. And then over here we've got a couple bandanas. This is the Lego bandana. And this looks good either way, either this in the front or the back part in the front for an outlaw. And this one over here is from Brick Warriors. And it works, but it only works really to cover the figure's face for an outlaw. Flipping it around, to me it just doesn't look as good, but if you're a Brick Warriors customer, you want to pick up a few of these for some outlaws, and of course you could paint them with Tester's paint or something, so if you want different colors. So it is an option, something that looks a little different than standard Lego. And then of course the hats, we've got our typical classic 1950s Hollywood cowboy hat, your Stetson here. And then not everybody wore these types of hats. Some people, especially people who lived, guys that lived in town, they might wear derbies or something with a smaller brim. So I've got a derby out here, and this is also a Lego part. So let's put a few of these together. Let's start with this, and we're going to put these legs on him, and then we're going to put the bandana on him. Smiling Bob, and get the hat set on him right, and there we go. So I think he looks pretty good. And again, you can flip this around to cover the figure's face if he's an outlaw, or again the Brick Warriors one. Brick Warriors one I just don't think looks as good this way, but there you go. Now let's throw together another one. We'll take this, we'll put these black pants on him. This head has got a pretty bushy mustache, and let's say he likes a bowler. And if you've seen Lonesome Dove, there's a couple of characters I think in there. Riding herd, wearing hats similar to that, so wouldn't be completely out of place. But I think you can see you can do pretty good even if all you have are hats and bandanas. And that's the old Hollywood formula. You take somebody with contemporary work clothes, give them a hat, maybe a bandana, maybe a gun, and off they go. A couple of other things to mention. These hats, these are nice looking hats. They come in, I think, white, black, brown. I don't know if there's any other colors. On some of the parts dealers' sites like Bricklink, these are listed as Outback hats or Outback fedoras. They're not listed as cowboy hats. So if you do a search on those Lego part sites for Outback, these will probably pop up, and then the smaller brim fedoras. And the smaller brim fedoras will work well too for a Western theme. And then the other thing is if you happen to be ordering parts, lighten this up a little bit, it got dark. I don't know how well that will focus. But Lego did make some parts with Chaps on them, spelled C-H-A-P-S. And these aren't expensive. I don't think they're particularly rare. And they come in two variations, a regular belt buckle and I don't don't know if you can see it there, but there's a steer belt buckle there. So if, for example, change this guy out, now all of a sudden, now, yeah, that's a little better, isn't it? Now we've got our smiling cowboy hero here, and I guess we'll call him something fanciful like Rex Righteous or something. A name like that. He needs a white horse and a guitar. We don't have those handy, so we're going to talk about hair. Now, old Rex here, he doesn't sleep in his hat. He doesn't eat dinner in his hat, especially with ladies present. You take your hat off. So what happens when Rex takes his hat off? Oh, yes. He doesn't have any hair. Well, that's popular today, but not so much back then. So let's see. Put some dews on him. That's fancy. That's... Didn't know they had hairdressers on the trail, did you? And then maybe we want to go for the blonde Conan O'Brien look. And the reason I'm doing this is when you're buying parts, accumulating stuff to put your figures together, even though it's the Old West, don't forget the hair for the men. That's an epic hairdo right there. And one thing you'll notice about Westerns, if you watch enough of them, they'll tell you as much about the time they were made as they do about the time they were set. So Gunsmoke in its first season, 1955, every man's got short hair like men had typically in the 1950s. By the 60s, hair was getting longer, getting grungier, people were looking grimier, maybe even more realistic. Get into the 70s, and guys had bangs. So maybe this is Rex circa 1972, and he's got this hair going on. And if Rex is still around today, just for equal representation, maybe he's an older gentleman now, and he's got the gray going on. So anyway, when you're ordering these parts, when you're ordering these guys, don't forget some hair. There's some real interesting hairstyles out there. Now I mentioned Brick Warriors, and I just wanted to cover a few items that they sell. First, of course, I talked about the bandana, and here we have it covering his face, so he's all ready to hold up a stagecoach. And again, that looks a little different than the Lego one, so it's something to consider. Also, they sell a cowboy hat, and the cowboy hat looks really good from the front. The back's got this kind of curve to it. I don't know. It doesn't fit the other way. Otherwise, the guy can't see where he's going. But it's a hat. It's interesting. It's different than the Lego hats. So something, again, to consider. Get my finger off of there. And then finally, a real unique item, spurs. And these come attached to a little sprue, and you just break them off, and then you press them into those little holes in the back of the legs, and you've got spurs there. Now, oddly enough, you have to remove these before you put the figure on a Lego horse, but still, if you've got a showdown going on in the middle of the street at high noon, I mean, he's got spurs.